Good morning, church family, and welcome back to another one of our online Sundays. Last week was full of activity. Saturday was taken up mostly with our Christmas market. There was a bit of setup to do. There was some pack down to happen. But in between setup and pack down, there was a number of store holders who came in to display their Christmas wares, and there were some very good-looking products that were here and on offer, and it seems to have been a good day and enjoyed by all. Then, on Sunday, we had our church service / meeting, and there was an opportunity for us to gather together to worship. We looked at our budget, we considered the church values, we shared communion, we prayed together, we heard stories, and there were testimonies, there were dumplings as well, and it turned out to be a really good morning in the life of the church. Today, we come to you, and you'll be watching this in December already. I know, where does the time go? Which means we are heading into Advent, and we start our Advent series on this day. And for that, it means that we are now allowed to have Christmas carols. Yes, so you'll be having the first of the Christmas carols coming up in just a little while. But before we get there, we read about what happened at Advent. And we read about it first from the Gospel of John, and he recorded it like this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And so this is what we celebrate at Christmas time, the coming of the light, Jesus, into this world. Like I said, we're now allowed to play Christmas carols. So we're going to do our first, and it's a newer one, but it's a goodie. It's one that I really, really like, and it's called He Shall Reign Forevermore. Let's listen to that now.
Creation groans for a world of darkness, frozen like a stone. Light is breaking in a stable for a throne. He shall reign forevermore, forevermore. He shall reign forevermore, forevermore. Kings and Lord of lords, and he shall reign forever.
And so we arrive at Advent time of year, meaning Christmas shall soon be upon us. And for our Advent series this year, we'll be looking at various characters in the Christmas story. We'll look at Herod, we'll look at the wise men, we'll look at Joseph. But to kick us all off, we're going to look at Mary. Mary was very impressive in the way that she responded to what the angels said to her, and then she lives out this life of faith. She would see her son born in these unique circumstances. She would see him grow, but then she would see him die an unnatural death in an unnatural order of events. He would die not by old age, nor by accident, nor would it be quickly. It would be slowly at the hands of evil people, painfully. Yet we never hear a word of complaint from Mary. Through it all, she seems to live out the statement that she makes in the text that we're about to read. And the statement is this: I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. We get introduced to Mary by Luke in a way that she is not spoken of by others. Paul never mentions her, nor does John. Mark and Matthew do, but not extensively at all. Luke is the one who provides us with more insights. And so it is from his gospel we read. Luke chapter 1, reading from verse 26 and concluding in verse 38. And it says this: In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, Greetings, you who are highly favored, the Lord is with you. Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end. How will this be, Mary asked the angel, since I am a virgin? The angel answered, The Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she, who is said to be unable to conceive, is in her 6th month. For no word from God will ever fail. I am the Lord's servant, Mary answered. May your word to me be fulfilled. Then the angel left her. So Mary receives this greeting from the angel Gabriel, and I would imagine this was a rather unsettling moment. When we encounter things that are outside of the ordinary run of events, it often takes us a few moments to gather our thoughts. And even then, once our thoughts have been gathered, when we think back on the occasion, you think, I wish I could have said, I wish there'd be things that we would no doubt go back and change. Perhaps you've had just a moment like that. I had one of those moments just this week. There was some loud bangs which were taking place, and I peered out of the curtain, from the curtain, because I'm a curtain twitcher, and I saw 2 people running away from the car park. And so I went out to go and have a look to see what had taken place. Judah joined us. Byron stayed, didn't lock the door. And we discovered that one of the vans in our car park had been vandalized. And so we stood around chatting for a little while. Then Judah and I went home, and we decided just to take a drive around the neighborhood, seeing if we could see any ruffians who had done such a thing. We went out looking for perps. And so we were like two Avengers that had gone out working in the shadows of the night in order to keep our neighborhood safe. Now, had we come across them, I would not have would not have engaged with them at all, would have phoned the police. But we drove around, we didn't find anything, so 20 minutes later, we returned home. But even then, I thought, man, I should have done something different. I should have maybe jumped in the car straight away, and so we could have followed them more easily rather than giving them all of these minutes to get away. And I'm not sure if anybody will ever be brought to task for the damage that was done. But Mary, in this moment, when she is engaged by this angel, even as we look back, you think, I'm not sure you could have done this better. That her response was the best response that she could have given. I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. Gabriel gets straight down to business, and he says, Greetings, you are highly favored. And the word greeting can also be translated as rejoice. And so he seems to be wanting to bring this news in a particular way, this good news in a particular way. And he carries on because Mary's got some questions. And the first question is, what sort of greeting might this be? Now, Mary would have known, being a Jewish girl, she would have known the stories that they would have had from of old. And when there was an angelic intervention in this world, it could go either way. It could be bad news and swift judgment as Sodom and Gomorrah, or the angel of death at the Exodus. But equally, it could be good moments too, like the angel armies that Elisha was able to see, or Gideon as he encountered the angel on the threshing floor. So this could go either way. But the angel says, you have found favor with God. Mary has found favor with God. Now, this is no small thing, and finding favor looks like something in particular in this text. And the key to it, I think, is found at the end of the text in the phrase that Mary used. I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. Jesus prayed a similar prayer when he was in the garden. Not my will, but yours be done. Elizabeth calls her blessed, and there's a reason that she calls her blessed, and it's found in verse 45 later in the same chapter. Elizabeth says, blessed is she who has believed that the Lord would fulfill his promises to her. Then in Luke chapter 11, Jesus was teaching a crowd, and a woman calls out to him, blessed is the womb that bore you and the breast that nursed you. And it's a colorful way of saying, man, how blessed is your mother? Because then the woman if you had a son that had done amazing things, then the woman's value or worth was sort of elevated. The mother's worth or value was elevated because you were the mother. But Jesus rejects this. And he says, blessed rather are those who hear God's word and obey it. Or as Mary said, may your word be, I am the Lord's servant, may your word to me be fulfilled. You see, using the word blessed is loaded with all sorts of connotations. New car, hashtag blessed. A new job, hashtag blessed. 4 Rugby World Cups, hashtag, is it too, I think it's probably still too soon. I'll let that one go. But Mary was going to discover that this blessing was going to be different to the sorts of ways we use the word blessing. Having a baby for a woman or a girl of her age was no miracle. It has always happened, and it still happens today. It's just simply biology. There are miracle babies. There are women who could not conceive and then do conceive. Even in the pages of the Bible, we read stories of such women. Elizabeth, who is in the story as well, was one. She was older, could not conceive, but then does conceive. Sarah in the Old Testament, she was like 90 years old or something when she conceived. But I also recognize that there are other women who have conceived, but then sadly have suffered a miscarriage. And if I was to ask people even to raise their hands, and I'm not doing that, if I was to ask if you've experienced it or you know someone directly who has experienced, I would expect that almost every hand would go up, because we know that this happens to people, and it happens maybe all too frequently. But we know also that young women falling pregnant is not an uncommon scene. If you were flicking through the channels of a TV and a young woman being pregnant was the scene that you happened to land on, you know that this is a storyline that's been oft repeated in film, in books, and in life. We know it. And yet we know that, we know that there are certain images that even as we just see the first image, we know how this is going to play out. We know what is going to take place. If someone is wearing a hat, the eyes squint slightly, a cigarette hanging out of the mouth, and it's a dry and dusty location, we know that it's a Western. If there are two people who are singing on either side of a closed door, not knowing the other person feels exactly the same way they do, and yet apparently not hearing one another, my children can hear the rustle of a lolly wrapper from 2 roads away, and yet on this occasion they can't. We know it's a rom-com. There's a gunfight. The hero happens to be wearing a jacket, and soon after he does something heroic, he discovers that he is bleeding. Where is he bleeding from? It's always the lower left abdomen being covered by the jacket. He is going to have to swoon at this particular moment. A cough early on in a film we know is ultimately going to be a deadly disease by the end of it, because we know what these scenes look like and how ultimately they're going to work out. Yet there are scenes that at first glance, you think, well, this is completely normal. And then you look a little bit harder and you realize that this is not the scene you thought it was. Moses encountered a burning bush that was being burnt and yet not consumed. A fiery furnace not burning up those who had been thrown inside. A den of lions and a very much alive Daniel. In some ways, these scenes have been just flipped on their heads. It's not what we would expect. Mary was to have a child. Women have been doing that since forever. But this child would be called the Son of God. She would be a virgin, but she would be pregnant. She would have other children, of course. But this particular scene makes us pause and look again. Of this child, the angel says, he will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end. These are no small titles. The Jewish people were expecting a Messiah, and there are many who still anticipate the Messiah coming still today. When we were visiting Russell and Karen a few weeks ago, they played a sermon by David Jeremiah, and in that sermon he told a story, and I thought, I'm going to go and look this up just to see, fact check, to see if it was something which was common practice, and it is. And in it he told a story, but that said that in Jerusalem today, some rental agreements, if you want to go and rent a property, there is a clause in them that is called the Messiah clause. And it is a clause which is present in rental agreements in Jerusalem. And the clause will go something along the lines of, if the Messiah is to return, you've got 15 days to vacate the property, because the owner of the property wants to come back. And so they've even written it into their contracts because they are anticipating the coming of the Messiah. And so Mary would have been no different, expectant of a Messiah that was coming. But there's no way she would have expected that she herself would have a role to play in this coming Messiah. These things happen to other people, more holy, more special than we are, that can do things that we can't do. Zechariah was a holy man. I emphasize both the words holy and the word man. He was a priest that served in the temple. He was going to serve in the Holy of Holies, and not even every priest got to do that. He was a man in a patriarchal society. So there was something special about him. And if you were to identify with one of these characters, Mary, who wasn't special in ways that we might measure, and Zechariah, who was special in the ways that might be measured, which one would we more easily identify with? Most of us, I would imagine, are not in the mold of Zechariah. We're of no reputation, really. Zechariah served in the temple. He got to go in the Holy of Holies. Yet both him and Mary met with God. Or is it more accurate to say that God met with them? And this should give us comfort. Mary, a female in a nowhere town in a subjugated land, will play this role in the plan of God himself. We will not give birth to the Messiah. We know that. But we can be faithful as Mary was faithful in the following of Jesus, even if we think we are lowly. Mary gets this news, and then she says this most faithful thing that we read in Scripture: I am the Lord's servant, may your word to me be fulfilled. And this is not a prayer or a statement that would easily roll off any of our tongues. I mean, we want it to be true, but we prefer it to be true in specific circumstances. I mentioned some of the blessings that we like earlier on in this sermon, and those are things for us that are easier for us to experience when we think we're finding favor with God. Yet when Elizabeth spoke, she spoke about how Mary was blessed because she believed God. Being unwed and pregnant is not ideal, yet she was willing, and this was the extent of her knowledge at the time. But let me add some other things in that where Mary was willing to live into the unknown, trusting God. Heading off to Bethlehem just as birth was near was not ideal. A stable or similar for the birth of your child is not ideal. No family around, not ideal. Just Joseph, who had not been through this before, not ideal. The first visitors were shepherds, not ideal. Having to move countries for a time to protect your son is not ideal. I'm an immigrant to this country, and many here are immigrants to this country, and we know how hard it is. Now imagine doing that as a teenager with a son as well. And yet we never have any record of Mary complaining. We don't have a record of her moaning about her lot in life. We see a faithful Mary, a thoughtful Mary, a hopeful Mary. And she seems to have lived this through her life. And I wonder if we would be willing to commit to the same words that Mary does, even when is contained in them the unknowing, being content that we don't know, but God does. None of us will face what Mary faced, but we can respond as Mary responded, with faithfulness and a commitment to Jesus. And that faithfulness and a commitment, and I know I've said this in sermons before, but just gets lived out in everyday ways. There are small, faithful steps that we grow into and then keep growing in our faith walk. We heard our budget last week, and the encouragement was to see if we could give 3% more. And let's see if we could do that. It's a small step. We offer our time. We teach our children. We make meals. We look after the land that we have been given. We make that phone call. We offer that hug. We provide the support. We help out people that need help. And we do this, and every time we do this, as a response to what Jesus has done for us, we are continuing to take our steps towards Him. Mary was willing to risk it all. And I wonder, when I consider that, where my limit would be. Where would I say, this is now too much for me to bear? I wonder where your limit might be. But in doing what she did, Mary was playing her part in making Jesus known to the world. That through this, that we would one day, and on this particular day, the 2nd of December, in the year of our Lord 2023, be talking about Jesus and encouraging others to follow Him. And when we engage in these small, deliberate acts to make Him known through our words and through our deeds, we are taking our next step both towards and with Jesus and encouraging others to do the same. And so, that's our encouragement today. As we conclude now, I conclude with a prayer. It's a prayer which is short, it's a prayer which is simple, but it's a prayer which is weighty. Let's pray together now. Father, we come before you this morning, taking the words of Mary, and ask that each one of us can live them out. I am the Lord's servant. May your words to me be fulfilled. Amen.